Welcome back. Thank you for coming across this video. On this one, it's going to be very unorthodox. It's an appreciation video that I'm doing for Vusi Thembekwayo. Although you might not like the person, but that does not take away the fact that he carries a message that ought to be heard and embraced by every African youth, not just South Africans. So why am I saying so? This is a young man that is not old, right? He's still an entrepreneur. He's developed his business. You know, he has sold businesses that he has developed, you know, and he's growing. He's a motivational speaker. And where you have some that are just speakers in quote with no experience, he tends to have a lot of facts in place, a lot of experience. And I wonder why such people are not in government or in political sector to bring about the change that he speaks about. I mean, because he has an eye to identify problems that are rife in our communities, that are at the center of poverty, unemployment, among others, development in Africa as per se. So in this video, I won't take much of your time. I just want us to watch, right? Don't judge, just watch. And then I would want to hear from you from what you've heard from him in the comment section. Let us watch.
We created a narrative discourse of free housing for all. Then we said free education for all. And free this and free that. Except month end, somebody has to pay for that which is free. And the economics of it are not very complex. If you build a free house, who's building it? A contractor. Month end, must that contractor be paid? Yes. Because if that contractor happens to be anybody, whether they are black or white, they have staff that must be employed, who must be paid. So this free, where does it start if the cost to construct is paid for? They will argue from a macroeconomic perspective that the state should fund it. And I don't want to have a long mesoeconomic debate here. That's not the point of our masterclass. But in your mind, when you become an entrepreneur, free, right, must leave your head. You must presuppose you're going to pay for everything you do.
Afrikaners are good at living in the reality they're in and solving problems for the reality they have. You know, that's kind of why they created Oranje. Not all of them. I don't want to be all-inclusive. You know, but for me, ShopRite is Afrikaner owned, right? Pepco, Afrikaner owned. Don't know if you guys know. Do you guys know that Pepco is the largest retailer of airtime in South Africa? Larger even than Blue Telecoms, Blue Label. Pepco is the largest retailer of nappies in the African continent. Pepco sells, true story, Pepco sells more t-shirts per hour than BMW sells cars per year. That's Pepco. But, so you go and check what the executives of Pepco earn. Yet when I mention it, Siyabahleka. Aye, Pep. Where the money is not always where the ego is, man. You know, that's why we build apps, because it's, I have an app. You know, and you can hit us with your English, right? I got the app. No, but what problem are you solving? Like, actually, what is the problem that you're solving?
We have to get the thinking of black people right. We have to get this right.
What do you mean by that?
Well, F&B wasn't built overnight. Neither was ABSA. So how do you think you're going to build a large business which employs thousands of people overnight and someone must give you capital? It doesn't work that way. Probably the single worst thing we did in this country's psyche when we did BEE transactions is we took people that had no money, gave them access to 26% of companies built over hundreds of years and created instant wealth. So now everybody wants
instant wealth, because nobody understands the practical tools of actually
100%.
building those organizations.
You come into my business, I can tell you every single moving part because I built it. I can tell you the IT, the infrastructure, the operations, the HR, the marketing, the finance, the working capital cycles.
Yeah.
I built it. Nobody came and it was just there. I built it from scratch. And it's important for, especially, and I'm passionate about saying this to black people specifically, we have to start where we are. We have to start where we are and build with the small steps.
Okay.
Radical economic. Radical.
I feel like I just started you on something.
Radical economic transformation starts in the mind. Why do you think there is no country in the world where Jewish people are poor? You think that's by mistake? Just think about that logically. Why do you think even in our own communities, Indians specifically, Asian Indians who are Muslim, are phenomenal business people? You think that's by mistake? No, it's because the grandfather started with a dry cleaner. When the grandfather passed, he left the dry cleaner to the father, who created a fast food and the dry cleaner. The father leaves the fast food and the dry cleaner with the son, who then creates a hardware store. By the time you go to the township, they've got the entire block and they run it. We have to start as black people by understanding you're not going to get a Range Rover tomorrow.
Yeah.
Start where you are, do what you have to do so you can do what you want to do. And let's celebrate each other's success. And I mean real successes, not the stuff that comes out of the paper, so-and-so's bought this car, so-and-so's at this event. No.
But why is it, you do know Tiger Brands? You know Tiger Brands, right? Okay, so Tiger Brands is in the same position. Tiger Brands, AVI Foods, all of them. Which is why Tiger Brands now invests in its own manufacturing. But Tiger Brands doesn't own farms. Okay? So when I buy a Tiger Brands product at Woolworths, the input, the beetroot for that product doesn't come from a farm owned by Tiger Brands. Which means Tiger Brands has arrangements with farmers or somebody to give them the input for the food that I buy from them. Make sense? Then Tiger Brands supplies to Pick and Pay. You may not know this. Tiger Brands gets paid 120 days after supply. So if they supply today, 120 days from today, let me give you guys a timeline. They supply today, 120 days from today, 3, 6, 9, 12. Tiger Brands get their money for the stuff they supplied then. Let's go back. So they supply today, yeah? What happens in 30 days? Do you know what happens? Pick and Pay places another order, which means 3, 6, 9, 12. They get that money. What happens on the 30 days? What happens, you know, after that 30 days? Another 30 days? Another order. Guys, Ratchet, follow me on this. 3, do you get it? So by the time they place the first order here, by the time they get their money here, they've had 4 more orders. Yeah? So this is it's called working capital. So when Tiger Brands thinks about financing their business, they're not thinking one order. They have to be able to finance in a stream of 10 orders before this money comes back into the cycle. And that's why guys don't understand the basic economics. So whenever you go to the shop, you go, why is this bread so expensive? That's why it's expensive. Because the cost of interest to carry the funding to finance this has got to be financed by someone. Make sense? Right. But that's on the output side. Let's talk inputs. So day one here, Tiger Brands supplied, yeah? Got the order to supply. But before they got the order to supply, they had to buy the raw materials. Would you agree? Before they bought the after they bought the raw materials, they then had to manufacture. Would you agree? Okay. So they manufactured 30 days before, bought 30 days before, and invested in a factory to do all of this 30 days before, and hired people to work in the factory 30 days before that. 3, 6, 9, 12. Before one order was placed, they had to finance all of that. Then after one order was placed, they finance all of that.
It's interesting, you know, entrepreneurship is not something you can teach. People either have it or they don't, which is just the ability to come in and see opportunities where they don't exist. But so the question around how do you find the gap, it's typically around 3 things. It's you got to find something people are willing to pay for, that they need now, and they have the money to pay for it. The minute you tick those 3 boxes, you're in business. So it doesn't matter what it is. You could be selling water, you could be selling ice cream, you could be doing anything. The minute you understand those 3 things, you effectively have found a gap in the market and you can start servicing that market.
Yeah. You know, how do you know when somebody is a successful entrepreneur? Obviously, they're characters, they're traits that you're looking for in people.
Yeah. So typically, for me, I look for three things. First thing I look for is somebody who's failed before. So I'd never back my money or put my money in somebody who hasn't tried something and hasn't failed. Because if you haven't failed, the theory of failure, entrepreneurship is interesting. It's a lot like swimming. So if I gave you a textbook on how to swim and you read it for 3 years and then I took you and chucked you in the ocean, you'd sink. Because swimming isn't a theory thing, it's a practice thing. You have to do it to know how to do it. So the first thing I'd say is it's somebody who's failed. I love people who failed because they've proven they've tried something and that they know what's on the other side of not succeeding, which is this failure thing. The second is somebody who believes in themselves even when there's ridiculous odds to suggest it's not going to work. I always say entrepreneurs are crazy. You have to be crazy to be an entrepreneur. You got to believe you're going to make money month end, which often you're not. You got to believe you can compete with big companies, which often you can't. You got to believe you can reach all your customers, which often you won't. And you have to believe you can do so cheaply and cost effectively and make a profit, which in the early days you probably won't do. If you don't believe those four things, you're not going to succeed as an entrepreneur. So you've absolutely got to be certifiable, absolutely crazy. And then the third thing is just people who are passionate. Like, you got to love what you do. Because I remember in the early days, the only thing that fed me was my passion. Like, there was no money at the end of the month. In fact, there was too much month at the end of the money. So you just got to be passionate. You got to love what you do.
My view is if you need funding to be an entrepreneur, odds are you're not an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs make it work. When I started, I did one thing to pay for the other thing, to pay for the other thing, so that I could do eventually the thing I want to do. Denzel Washington says, you do what you have to do so you can do what you want to do. If you need money to start, don't start. Because there are going to be times in your business when there's nobody there to give you money. I remember days when I used to have people in my office. Every month end, I wouldn't have money to pay salaries. Yet I would get on the phone and I would still trade in the business. And then I would phone my suppliers and say, look, I don't have money to pay you, but I still need you to supply me what you need to supply me with. So it's important for entrepreneurs to know that money is an important growth factor. When you need to move from 1 to 10, you need money. But to go from 0 to 1, you don't. If you want to own a chicken farm, you first start by selling eggs. If he wants to be a property developer, he should probably start by getting properties that are available, renting them out, generating a financial track record, generating cash flows, proving he can run a business, learning mistakes, owning 3, 4, maybe 5 flats. Then he can build an apartment building 60 flats. Look, show me one CEO of any state-funded agency that has funded entrepreneurs that's been an entrepreneur.
Give me 5.
So that answers your question. Remember, my perspective isn't theoretical. I've just sold my business to US investors. So I can tell you from
How much have you sold your business for?
It's an undisclosed sum, and it
Is
remains
it a
an
million?
undisclosed sum.
We need to be able to encourage excellence here.
Let me put it to you this way. A portion of the proceeds from which I've sold my business, I've taken 10 million rand of my own personal money, and I'm investing it in my own venture capital fund to invest in other entrepreneurs, right? So, because I genuinely believe in the growth of this country. I believe this whole economic hullabaloo we're having will pass. South Africa's been through much, much worse. I'm old enough to remember a time when my parents were paying a bond at 27%, when the inflation was above 10%. So we'll come through this. I'm taking a long-term view about where this country's going. But for entrepreneurs to understand simply that when you go to state-funded agencies, and I say this with the greatest of respect because I know a lot of them, they intend to do good work, but they're driven by dogma, system, and process. That's why they say to you, fill in a business plan. Once you've done it, have you got a website? Once you've done that, do you have a brochure? Your market's changed. The customer's gone. The opportunity's dissipated. You got the tender on Monday. You're supposed to supply on Friday, and they're asking you to write an 80-page business plan to give 100,000 rand in funding. The model doesn't work.
So in other words, the very same people who are giving you or are saying to you, draft these strategies, don't even know how a business operates. Those that don't do teach, basically.
Let me put it to you the simplest way I can. If I gave you a 300-page thesis that taught you everything you needed to know about swimming, and you read it over a 5-year period and internalized it, understood it, and memorized it, then I took you and threw you in the depth of the ocean, you would sink. Because swimming isn't a theory thing, it's a practice thing. You have to do it. Entrepreneurship is exactly the same way.
Very inspiring, fascinating, and thoughtful, thought-provoking. You know, on this platform, I've made it a point to ensure that, you know, I challenge your school of thought, your paradigm, why you think the way you do, and, you know, why you act the way you do. Sometimes you'll find that you are a victim of a paradigm that you don't even know how it came about because of, you know, 1 or 2 different challenges, you know, lack of information that we're not privy to. But thank God for social media, we can now come across such information brilliant knowledge, experience, researched information. And this is open for everyone. I would wish if, Vusi Thembekwayo can be invited by our governments in Africa to do entrepreneur classes. I know he does speaking engagements, but obviously when he's booked at events specifically. But let's try and make this brain a curriculum so that we can study and learn what he knows. Sometimes you don't have to hate the individual. Embrace what they have. Embrace what they carry. If it is something that will impact your life, we need to learn how to swallow our pride. I mean, some of you might disagree with him for reasons that are best known to you. But I would love to hear your take and feedback from this video that you just watched, from the information that is just, been given to us. Thank you so much. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do. That's the only way that you encourage us to, dig deep and look for these contents that we share that will bless your life and improve you as a person. Every day you wake up, you should have improved. You should have become better. If you're going backwards, then it means that a life is not really a life. Something that is breathing, something that is living should be evolving. Living is evolving, and knowledge is key. And the more we increase in knowledge, the more we are informed. And when you are informed, you can now make the executive decision. Remember, you have the power of choice, but without knowledge, you will be limited. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section. I would love to hear from you. Thank you.